Well, hello. It's probably a while since you heard anything from me. I decided to throw out a little interview I had with Colin the Marketing Troll from Iron Crown Enterprises. We talked about Rolemaster, we talked about HARP, talked about Shadow World, talked about Cyradon, and we talked about Colin, a bit about his personal background. I just thought I'd throw this out to anybody who listens on this medium, just in case you're interested with it. I hope you enjoy it. Take care. Cheers. Thanks, Colin. Thanks for joining me. We have a history. I believe we played, when was it, 2015? Was that 7 years ago?
Oh, it's so depressing. Like, I can't believe I've been at Iron Crown for 10 years. Like, 2015 we played together.
We were playing an RMU beta, I think, that Dakadin had done on Fantasy Grounds, sort of jury rigged for a gentleman called Chris Seal. Hope Chris is out there. I speak to him occasionally. Who's the author, I believe, of a Wedding and Axebridge, I think it was, an Iron Crown module. Okay, first of all, if you just want to just say a little bit about yourself, then I'm going to ask you a question, which are the Grognard files, which if you ever get a chance to listen to that podcast, by the way, they're quite good. I'll ask you that question yourself. So, Colin, what he asks a lot of his guests, and they've got some good guesses. He says, how did you get into role playing?
That is a good question, and I'm nervous about the answer because I don't think anyone's going to like it. So I'm quite new to role playing. When I was very young, I used to play Warhammer 40,000 with my brother, and unfortunately, I was so young, I didn't understand the rules, and by the time I was old enough to know the rules and know my brother had been cheating, he didn't want to play anymore. And then I didn't really. That's the closest I came to role playing as a young person, until 10 years ago when I saw an advert for Iron Crown, and I applied for it. I'd always been really interested. I remember when I was in primary school. For any American listeners, I don't know what the equivalent is over there, but when I was about 6 or 7, I went to a guy at school's house, and he wasn't my friend. I don't know why I went to his house, but he showed me like a print off of different things that you could buy in D&D, and I was amazed by it, and I kept it. It might still be in my drawer somewhere, but I kept it for such a long time because I thought it was brilliant. Quite sadly, I just never had the friends that were into it to play until 10 years ago, Iron Crown came along. So the honest answer is I think I've never played anything that wasn't made by Iron Crown, but I think that's soon to change because I've got a friend that's going to run a game of the new Alien RPG.
Wow, okay. I mean, do you game at the moment, or are you just too busy? Because I know you've got sort of several spinning plates, don't you? So
yeah, it's at the moment I'm not playing beyond this Alien RPG that's supposed to be coming up. I've got a friend who loves D&D and wants to play a game of D&D, but it's D&D. Who can be bothered? And I'm trying to get him into Rolemaster or HARP or something.
Yeah.
And I say recently, it's probably about a year or two ago now, played in a game that is shared on the Discord. On the ICE Discord, there's a channel for videos that people do on Twitch. I was a cameo in one of those for a very short period.
Ah, okay. I think you played in the campaign that I played in for a little while, for a few bits, run by Stuart.
I think you were in it. Yeah, the one with Stuart.
AK Ancelis. So, you said you saw an advert for Iron Crown. What was the job description, and where did they advertise that 10 years ago?
I couldn't tell you what the job description was. They were looking for someone to do the marketing, and I was young and enthusiastic and had a really great boss at the time, because I was employed working for, I think it's okay to say this, working for quite a shady stockbrokers. But the boss was
is there any other kind?
What's that?
Is there any other kind?
Well, yeah, exactly. But my boss there was brilliant, and he sort of said to me, you know what, go out, learn new skills, take on new jobs, take on new opportunities, like just do it all at once to get better. So I was sort of just searching around, and it was actually on Gumtree that I saw the advert, and I thought to myself, you know what, I've always loved that sort of thing. I've always wanted to get into role-playing games. I've always, been into sort of geeky things like Tolkien and fantasy and sci-fi and things like that. And I thought I'd apply for it. And I was as surprised as anyone when I got the job. So here we are 10 years later.
what did they get you to do initially, and how's that sort of that role grown as time goes by? Because I know right now you sort of like, I think you're right into art direction, but before that, I mean, what did you start off with, and how's it progressed as time's gone by?
I think initially it started mostly with sort of social media and a little bit of sort of blogs on the website and managing the website and things like that. And I think when I came into it, I was really nervous, and I probably sent Nicholas a few too many emails and reports about what I was doing and how I was doing it. And since then, it's just grown quite naturally into, me doing pretty much anything and everything. I'm always open to new ideas of how Iron Crown how we can better interact with our fans and followers, and how we can reach new audiences. So at the moment, I do a lot more sort of stuff in terms of the website, like I'm beavering away at trying to get the old Guild Companion files up on the website, and making sort of a replacement for the archive on the forum, that people can just sort of dip into and find lots of really interesting and useful stuff. But as you mentioned, on top of that, I do the art direction for, I think, everything. And I'm also writing an adventure set in Cyradon for HARP, having sort of recently finished writing the HARP Bestiary and seeing that released.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, is art something to do with your background? Because I do not have an artistic bone in my body. I could not tell you the right combination of colours. If my art is so rudimentary that I go, if it looks like a photo, it must be good art. You know, I'm terrible like that.
I'm one of those strange people, which I sort of fell into marketing. At university, I studied script writing for film and television. So that had loads of real world job applications there. But so I sort of came from a writerly background and fell into sort of copywriting for the shady stockbrokers. But I think I'm the perfect person for marketing because I'm a terrible mix of mathematics and science, and art and literature. I'm a jack of all trades, master of none, and I don't think that's an insult. I think it's good to be a jack of all trades. It lends itself quite well. Also, I think you sort of overestimate quite my involvement in the art. It tends to work that I sort of look. So my process is to look through the book and sort of sketch it out where art is needed on which pages, or how the chapters unfold and things like that, and then to try desperately to come up with an idea for an image that isn't, ripped off of something else or just really naff and rubbish, and try and come up with new ideas and new suggestions. The brilliance of the art is all down to the artists. I'm never sure whether I'm too prescriptive with them in terms of saying, oh, I've got this idea for this image, or whether I'm not prescriptive enough in terms of just saying, I want a picture of a goblin up a tree eating fish. I really should ask them whether they think that's good or not.
I mean, how's that been? 'Cause you've obviously got to learn as you're going along. So what's the learning curve been like on that?
It's been really difficult. I think it's tough. It's tough to know where the line is. My brother's an animator, and so I see sort of firsthand how hard and how sort of difficult the job is, and how hard my brother pushes himself, and how hard artists have to work to make a living and things like that. And unfortunately, Iron Crown doesn't have huge budgets for these things. I'm often emailing artists and saying, I'm sorry we can't work together. It's just we haven't got that much budget. It's not that your art, we would love to have your art. Your art's brilliant. It's worth more than this, but this is all we've got. And managing those relationships and sort of understanding, finding a way of getting the best out of people without pushing them too hard and without being rude, because I know we haven't got great budgets. So I tend to think, if we give them longer time to do the art, then perhaps the lower budgets are more acceptable to them. But that might not be the case. I love it. I think it's brilliant. I love seeing the artwork come in, and it's really exciting. But I'm also incredibly nervous because if something comes in that isn't quite what I envisaged, it's heartbreaking to go back to someone and say, oh, can you change this? Or, sometimes I won't, and I'll just think, oh, I'm going to get it in the neck for that on the forums later.
I mean, you are definitely one of the most accessible people in Iron Crown, so that's double-edged sword for you, unfortunately, isn't it? Because it's good that you've got that good touch with the customers, but also you've got the people of this world who are probably not going to be happy with anything, or at least something that you've done.
It is brilliant. Like if I could, and I say this to anyone that would listen, if anyone wants to pay me to work for Iron Crown full time, it would be amazing, because the fans are brilliant. I know I complain a lot about, people getting upset about RMU and people getting upset about artwork and writing and different bits and pieces. But for the most part, it's just wonderful to be part of that community, and it's wonderful to form relationships with people that, I will probably never meet. Terry was a great example. It was
Yeah.
a great honour to have interacted with Terry and to work with Terry in the very small ways that I did. When you look at all the amazing things that Terry's been a part of and that Terry's done, and it was a shock and a sad loss to all of us.
Oh God, yeah. It was really every part of community that I'm part of was just absolutely shocked, and it's a great loss. A great guy.
Yeah, it really was. It was lovely.
So you've mentioned if somebody could pay you, full time to work for Iron Crown, that'd be great. And and talking with the community, and I imagine they ask you all the time about when's our RMU out. Now, I think I could probably say that you're probably going to say hopefully sometime this year. Maybe that's where the money's going to come from. Maybe it'll just be more popular than 5th edition. God, I wouldn't. That'd be fantastic if that was the case, and there'd be money for everybody.
It would be fantastic. Yeah, I think RMU is going to be brilliant. I hope lots of people buy it. I hope it's going to be fantastic. I think it would be unrealistic of me to expect that this is going to be the thing that launches us up to Hasbro's standards.
Yeah.
I think it's a long road ahead. If that's where we want to go. But as for when RMU is coming out, when we went to Dragon Meet in December, I love going to Dragon Meet. It's a shame we didn't see you there, Steve. But it's the one time of the year that I have Nicholas to myself for almost an entire day, and can just grill him on different questions and bits and pieces. And we got lots of questions at Dragon Meet, and Nicholas's answer was it will be out this year. The artwork is all done for Arms Lore and Character Lore and Spell Lore. Treasure Lore is almost through commissioning, and I'm working on Character Lore, on Creature Lore in terms of getting the artwork done for that. One thing I don't know is which books Nicholas is willing to release without the others. So I suspect he might release Characters and Arms and Spell and maybe Treasures all at the same time.
Right.
And then hold for Creatures if it's not ready. But he definitely wants to sort of release as many of them together as he can.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm inexperienced in this kind of field, but that makes sense to me, because I'd like, to get my hands on the whole system so I could play it. And then, like you say, with the creatures, I could probably jury rig from previous versions, and then when the actual creatures comes out, I'd also like to buy that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think Creatures is now going to be 2 books, so maybe he'll release it with the first book, and then the second book will come out later.
And that's hundreds of pages, right? That Creatures one.
Yeah, I haven't even got through it in terms of looking. Sort of, as I say, I look through the thing and then decide which bits need art and where. Yeah, it's just going to be massive. So
if somebody was on the forums going, why is it still not done yet? It's basically because you're going to have to take the time with this on the art, because of the sheer amount of art that's in there. And obviously you had a giant budget. You could probably have tens of artists on the go. I mean, do you have like a pool of, how many artists are you actually using at the moment? So I would say I've got a list of maybe 15 that I'm sort of using and happy to use. Yeah. But at any given time, 5 to 10 of them might be too busy to take anything on, or might have, for whatever reason, can't work on this, I can't do that, and the problem is because we're sort of at the lower end of the budgets for art. Mm-hmm. We lose a lot of artists off the top end, because they go, actually, I'm now, commanding a lot more money for my art, so this is a bit beneath me. So I've got to sort of constantly be finding new artists. And so you find them, they're good, you get them up and running, you do some art, and then they're moving on to the next biggest thing, and I've got to find some more artists. Got to be hard, especially then, because you're being. I imagine constantly quizzed on when's it out, and it's hard to say. I imagine with something like this. And I don't think even I understood the amount of stuff that goes into it. So to sort of talk people through it, the writing, a lot of time was taken over the writing, because for obvious reasons we want to make sure that this is
as good as it can be, and is the perfect version of RMU, and is the version of Rolemaster that everyone gets behind moving forward.
Yeah.
But then after that, you need to go to art and layout. And I think around the time that we started finishing RMU, we started losing a lot of our layout people. Terry did layout, but obviously was doing a bit less and less, and we lost a lot of the artists that we had formerly worked with through, either them going off the top end of the budgets and we couldn't afford them anymore, or they just stopped doing art, or for whatever reason. And so I feel like one thing that people may or may not be aware of is that there was a period just before we sort of started working on this where it was kind of an entirely new team. So we've now got a new person doing layout, we've got me doing art. I think Nicholas quite rightly has started us on projects that are maybe not quite so high profile, and is now we're now in the throes of doing RMU proper.
Would you see then, Colin, RMU as the flagship product for Iron Crown?
I think so, yeah. I think I love HARP. I'm sort of all into HARP. And so I would love to see HARP go great places, but I don't think HARP has ever, or possibly will ever, have the following of Rolemaster. And I think the idea is that once RMU's up and running, it, to an extent, it stops the, RM Classic, RMFRP, SS, RMX. It stops the version wars, hopefully. And it's just like, right, come on, we're getting behind RMU, and then we can just churn out loads and loads of cool stuff for RMU, and just hopefully, use that moving forward.
I looked to my left here on my shelf of shame that I haven't played. I was at Dragon Meet one year, and have any of you who's listening ever seen Colin? He's over 6 foot, and then I was with Chris Seal, who's the GM at the time, who's also over 6 foot, and I think the two of them said, "You should try HARP," and I just looked up at them because I'm only about 5'7". I went, "Oh, okay." So I bought HARP SF and the HARP vehicle things, but other than looking at the critical tables, because critical tables is brilliant for Iron Crown, I've not played it much. I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot here, Colin, because obviously it's hard for you to sort of like maybe sum up HARP in a few sentences. But I mean, if somebody's listening, somebody like myself, what would you say is going for HARP? Because I know there's a magic system which is quite good, quite innovative. I put you on the spot, haven't I? Sorry.
You really did.
Okay, look, give it some thought at some point. Maybe this is, the whole point of this talk obviously was just to really just chat to you, really, to see what's going on. So I don't want to put you on the spot. About something you've been working on Cyradon, is that right?
Yep.
Would that be easy to talk about?
Yeah, I can talk about Cyradon all day long. It's the problem with trying to explain HARP is that I can only explain it in terms of Rolemaster. So I can say, HARP is this, where Rolemaster is that.
I'm okay with that. I mean, it's got criticals, right? So, because I've definitely seen those. It's
got criticals. It's, in very basic terms, it's kind of a simplification of Rolemaster. It's a lot of people say, it was born out of MERP, and it's an attempt to sort of take what was great about MERP and put it into a product.
Okay.
The spell system, the magic system, as you said, is very different in terms of it's not lists, it's individual spells, and you can sort of power up those spells by putting more power points into them. You can make blast radiuses bigger, you can reach further, you can do stuff like that. It's got the critical tables that everyone loves. Character creation is simplified and easier. The spell costs are just, I'm forgetting all the words that I need to remember now, 2 or 4.
I mean, it sounds like there's some kind of interchangeability between that and RM. I mean, there's a bunch, I think, of HARP adventures out. I mean, could they, by any chance, be like restatted for RMU when that comes out?
Yeah, and that's sort of the plan. So the most recent, which was released yesterday, so everyone go to DriveThruRPG and search for HARP Garden of Rain, which is very recently released yesterday in print.
This is going to sound like some marketing thing now. It literally was released yesterday, was it?
It was. It was released yesterday in print. And I think that is statted for HARP, Rolemaster Classic and Rolemaster FRP. And I think the idea moving forward is to, when we get an adventure, to just sort of stat it for everything. And even if we don't, maybe we release a little addendum on the website that's sort of like, here's the stats for RMU for that HARP adventure or whatever. So that's the plan.
Personally, I think that's a great idea. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm looking here. I've made a note here. One of the questions I was going to ask you about was I play Fantasy Grounds quite a lot, and I play obviously. I mean, I think if you're playing Rolemaster and you're not playing on Fantasy Grounds, you're missing out on a lot of automation. Jeremy, aka Dakadin, has done a fantastic job. And one thing I've got here is about I think he is going to be working on a Fantasy Grounds rule set for RMU. I've definitely heard him say that. Maybe about a few months back. I probably should ask him, but do you know, is he still working on that?
Yes, and my understanding, and I will always say that anything I say about Iron Crown comes with a pinch of salt because I'm just me, and sometimes I struggle to catch up with Nicholas as much as anyone else does. But my understanding is that Dakadin has the RMU rule set, and that he was given it when it was completed or so near completion as there were going to be no major changes to anything. And that he is underway in putting that rule set together.
Gotcha.
He may tell me otherwise.
Because I think there's character sheets, I think, for Roll20, I think, for Rolemaster now. I'm sure I've seen that as well. Not seen much on Foundry, but I mean, I suppose if RME brought in a bit of money, hopefully there'd be, some money there available to sort of make it more widely available for virtual tabletops. Because I live I'm the arse end of nowhere in Norfolk, so I don't have a lot of people near me who can play. So VTT to me are really a real godsend. So it'd be nice for more support that way. If that's just my personal wish list, I mean,
it's a difficult one. You're right. If I could wave a magic wand, I would have a massive rule set on Foundry and on Roll20 and just have everything on every VTT, because I agree with you. I think they're the way forward. I've very rarely played in real life. It's always been over some sort of computer-based system.
Yeah.
But the problem is just finding people who can do that work and finding a workable way of monetizing it, if that makes sense. So
yeah.
I know Fantasy Grounds. I love Fantasy Grounds, like you said. The work Dakadin has done is amazing, and it's just so easy and brilliant to play on Fantasy Grounds. I don't know enough about Roll20 or Foundry to say, okay, this is how we're going to charge people for the rule set, or this is how we're going to go to market with it. And the problem is, if there's no money in it, essentially we're giving the game away for free.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I know there's a lot of things to be said for that, because we get more fans, and maybe then they buy, we'd see more sales in physical books if there's more fans, blah blah blah. But they're not decisions for me to take. They're Nicholas's decisions, and so we need to think about how we're gonna monetize things like that.
I mean, I'd say on the Fantasy Grounds, paying for the RM rule set, you're not gouged. I mean, I don't know what is in currency and wherever people are listening, but I think it's about 20 quid, and I didn't think that was too bad really. For a rule system, I mean, you pay a lot more for other rule systems, a hell of a lot more.
Yeah, and that's one of the brilliant things about working for Iron Crown, is that Nicholas has always said, he's not trying to make huge profits with the book. He's happy to sell the book, especially print copies. We sell them at cost with a tiny bit extra on top. So, and I think that's a good way to be. We've got a dedicated fan base who love the products, and we don't want to, we don't want to price them out of the market. We want them to have everything that we put out. We want them to carry on being fans, and if we can attract some new fans while we're doing that, all the better.
Yeah, that'd be great. I promise you, I haven't got a hit list here. It's just that I'd made a note here said Fantasy Grounds rule set, and then I've got the next thing is adventures. So I've already said about you could maybe stat adventures for RMU. Do you know there's going to be, because obviously I'll buy the rule set and then I might sort of go, oh, is there any adventures out for this? I could probably restat the HARP ones, but do you know there's any plans for RMU specific type adventures, which could lead you on to talk about Cyradon actually, Colin, if you want to.
We seem to whiz past it in the one thing that I was prepared.
Yeah, no, don't worry. Tell us about the adventures, and then maybe, because we'll need a setting, and Shadow World sometimes I find quite daunting. Now, luckily, my GM that I play with quite regularly he knows it very, very well, and we've got a couple of very knowledgeable players with Shadow World. But I have played in Cyradon. I think we played in Cyradon a while back, and I have a kind of a like for that as well. So, tell us about adventures, and then tell us about Cyradon if you don't mind.
So, in terms of RMU adventures, All I can tell you, which isn't particularly helpful, is that I have often heard Nicholas say that when he releases RMU, he wants there to be like a slew of products come out after it, which includes a lot of adventures. I can't tell you more than that because I don't really know, because all of the writing side of stuff goes through Nicholas and only comes to me when it's finished. So I would assume that there's something in the pipeline. It hasn't quite reached me yet. In terms of your point on Shadow World, is I sort of agree with you. I find Shadow World a bit scary because there's so much of it, and it's so deep and it's so brilliant. It sort of feels a bit like trespassing when you think about putting your thoughts into that world, because it's so, it's so rich and it's so Terry's world.
Yeah.
And I think I'm not really sure. I think the plan is to release RMU stats for Shadow World products, whether that means asking someone else to sort of look at it and maybe rewrite bits of it and then do the stats, or whether it will just be an addendum sort of Shadow World stats, or just a sort of standalone product that sort of does as much of it as you can. I'm not sure.
I mean, I don't know if it's been released already, but Iron Crown, sorry to cut across you, Colin, I know that in other gaming systems, they have another one. I mean, I probably mention it's RuneQuest, it's Glantha, it's the same issues. Like, Glantha is supposed to be massive, it put me off playing it. But I think recently they've done like a kind of like a starter set where they've really boxed it into a small area. I mean, I don't know if that kind of thing exists for Shadow World, but maybe that might be something that could be considered in the future.
Yeah, and I think the Shadow World question is a bigger one in terms of what we do going forwards, in terms of maintaining Terry's legacy and moving forward with it, because it's genuinely loved by so many people, including people that don't necessarily play Rolemaster.
Right.
That decision is for bigger brains than me, I'm afraid.
So, go on, tell us about Cyradon.
Moving on to Cyradon. So Cyradon, as you said, so if Chris Seal is listening, Chris Seal was the GM of the game that me and Steve played together for. It was a good 2 or 3 years, wasn't it? We played together.
Yeah, it was. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Chris. It was set in a small island off of the island of Cyradon. So Cyradon is the name of it in the world of Mithra, and Chris Seal set his in a place called Cairglace.
Yes, yeah, Cairglace, yeah.
And so my understanding is that Chris is working on releasing that as a setting module for the Cyradon setting. So if Chris is listening, Chris, get working on it, because I'm excited to see it. We played in there for years. I want to see the product. I want to play in it again. This is a slight aside, and the people listening are probably going to be by this, but I was so pleased with the way that adventure ended that I want to see Chris put it into his book and into his product.
Yeah.
And I believe that it ended with my character building a shrine to your character, who sadly died halfway through the adventure.
Noble sacrifice.
Yeah. But Cyradon, so Cyradon, the setting is finished. It was already finished, and Nicholas asked me to rewrite it for the new version of HARP, because HARP had a bit of an overhaul a while back. And so to restat things and add things in that were missing, and so on and so forth. And so I did that, and it was difficult because Cyradon, I think I'm right in saying, was sort of created by Nicholas. So there was quite a pressure to not smash up his work. And so I did that, and Nicholas said, okay, and I also want you to do these introductory adventures, which again existed in a form, but he wanted to make them, because they were for conventions. They've been sort of created with the idea of going to conventions and playing convention games. So he wanted to sort of round them out and make them a bit more fulsome. And he said he's not going to release Cyradon until I finish the adventures.
Oh.
And however many years on, I now understand entirely why, because having written the adventures, I've now had to go back to Cyradon and go, right, I understand more about this place now. I need to rewrite this. And I'm also a lot less precious about smashing up Nicholas's work now. So I've gone back and I'm just going to rewrite this whole section, because this bit doesn't work for me anymore.
Wow, and he's your boss, so that's brave.
Yeah. It was one of our many conversations at Dragon Meet this year, was me essentially saying to him, I've come to the realization that actually the adventures, I can just write what I want, and then I'll change Cyradon. And he was like, yeah, of course. Like, don't feel you've got to stick to my vision of Cyradon. So it's becoming a bit more my vision these days.
And so there's going to be like a big Cyradon setting book coming?
There's a big Cyradon setting book coming. The text, I need to make a few changes, but is pretty much there. And then almost immediately afterwards, there will be an adventure set in Cyradon, which will be released. And that's what I'm currently working on. And that is not finished yet. It's a difficult one because I'm essentially freelance. Well, I am freelance. So, I work for Iron Crown X number of hours and I get paid X amount, and another company X number of hours and I get paid X amount.
Mm-hmm.
With the writing, I don't get paid until it's finished.
Right.
So it's never my priority, no matter how much I want it to be. My wife would kill me if I spent all my time writing and had no money at the end of the month.
You have a young child as well, don't you?
I do. I've now got a 3-year-old and a 6-month-old.
Oh, you got another one. Oh, okay. Yeah, well, there you go. So that's
you've missed a lot in the past couple of years, Steve.
So that's eating up your time as well. Okay,
Yeah.
Look, I've got no other notes that I've made here. That's about it, really. So is there anything you want to sort of add to any of the 10 listeners? I'm lying. I've actually looked at the podcast downloads. There are literally thousands of downloads now, which is pretty nice to know that there's still people listening and listening about Iron Crown products.
What's your podcast? I should have listened before I came on, really. But what do you normally just talk about ice products? Or?
No, not at all. I mean, it's actually been an actual play. It was a Rolemaster one. We did an Adventures in Middle Earth one, but looking at the number of downloads, the Rolemaster one was by far the most downloaded, and the channel I have was just the recordings of the Fantasy Grounds, and that channel view's got 20,000 views. So I mean, it's nice to know there's people out there, because I don't really push that much. I've not had anything over a year. I think what really helped there was like a how-to guide of how to use Fantasy Grounds. But yeah, it's nice that there's actually an audience out there still, because I think that's it'd be nicer. I wish more people would talk about Iron Crown, because when I listen to other podcasts, they always seem to be a bit disparaging about how grindy Rolemaster is, and you sort of think, is it really though? I mean, you're making a roll, you're adding your skill, and you're adding some modifiers. Aren't they all like that?
Yeah, and I get that. It's one of my sort of frustrations is that part of my job is sort of keeping up with what people are saying. And, I've got alerts if anyone. It's quite creepy when you think about it, but if anyone on Twitter mentions Rolemaster, it brings it to my attention. And yeah, sometimes, like, let me just say this to any listeners. Words hurt, guys. Sometimes I get quite upset with the amount of nasty things people say. I want to create a GIF. I need to sit down and do it one day because I think it's hilarious. I want to create a GIF of Cher singing, I think it's Walking in Memphis, where she says, words are like weapons, they wound sometimes. And basically, I want that in the bank. And whenever anyone says anything mean about Rolemaster, I'm just going to post that and walk away. But I imagine people get very bored of that very quickly.
Yeah. Though there are a few people out there. There's a podcast called Frankenstein's RPG, and definitely the Criticals got in there from Iron Crown Systems, so that was nice.
Yeah.
But a lot of times he was getting derided for actually talking about even for character creation. But I don't think it's that grindy, and I imagine most of our listeners don't feel that way either. So if there's anybody out there, go and do a podcast on this. Have a weekly talk on Iron Crown stuff. I'll definitely subscribe to it.
And let us know. So this is the message that so the few things that I want to talk about. Number one is, if anyone is interested in playing Rolemaster, if anyone loves Rolemaster but hasn't got a game going, look at Fantasy Grounds. As we've already mentioned, it's brilliant. And look at Steve's videos about how to on Fantasy Grounds, because they're brilliant. I love them. They're on the Iron Crown website if you dig far enough. And yeah, so if you're into it, go and do that. Also, if you're into Iron Crown, join the Discord server. There's always a lot of big talk about various bits and pieces in there, and very few fights that I have to break up, which is always a plus. And don't let societal pressures get to you. Rolemaster is cool. Iron Crown is cool. I often complain to my wife that the guys in Big Bang Theory play Dungeons and Dragons. I'm like, they wouldn't play Dungeons and Dragons. They play Rolemaster.
Yeah, they play definitely, absolutely. Is there anything else you want to add before we can leave it there?
No, just a thank you to Steve for the podcast. And keep in touch, man. We don't talk enough.
No, absolutely. I was exactly thinking that. I thought, right, I'll make it up to Dragon Meet this year. I'll definitely will. All right, Colin. Well, thanks very much for that, and I'll catch you another time.
Yep, and thanks for all the listeners.
Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that. I'll catch you next time. Cheers.